Back at it again. It's another edition, The State of Football, brought to you by the NFL Draft Bible here live on Twitter, Periscope, and YouTube. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Hard to believe it's part 10 for the last 2 weeks. We've been breaking it down, hitting you with the hard topics, debating what the football calendar could look like, doing our best guesstimation with the best experts there are on the planet. RIC in a place to be. Rick Saratella telling it like it is when it comes to the NFL draft and beyond in the football world. We appreciate you all sharing, liking, and retweeting. So tell a friend and spread the word, because this is not for the mainstream. This is not for the fluff riders. This is for all of you people that want real answers about real topics. And so we've got a few newbies in the building today, and we're looking forward to that. Of course, my co-host each and every day up there in Toronto with the Argonauts, John Murphy. We welcome him into the show. John, how are you today?
Oh, I'm excited because one of the best moments I ever saw at a NFL training camp was produced by Mr. Jones, sitting over there as I think he introduced one of the Jets' young running backs to himself, and it was quite spectacular. Quite spectacular, to see somebody pop the pads early in training camp one day, and Marvin lit up this poor running back who caught one out of the backfield and wasn't really paying too much attention. And
wow, man, that was long ago.
Yes, sir.
I just believe in doing what you get paid for, man. If you're gonna do the job, make sure you do it right.
Well, you were definitely doing what you were paid to do, and you asked him for some change right there on the 40-yard line.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep. I was there.
You want some throwback, hard hitting, laying the lumber hits? Go watch some Marvin Jones film. And John, I'm a little disappointed. We got through the whole show yesterday. We didn't even get to sing happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Johnny.
So happy birthday to John. Of course, Marvin Jones, we welcome him into the show for the first time. As John mentioned, the legendary Marvin at Florida State, just recently inducted to the Florida State Hall of Fame there, former first-round pick for the New York Jets, current head coach for the Omaha Beef. We can go on and on with his off-field job titles, and, of course, the director of the NFL Draft Bible Scouting database, and he's doing a marvelous job, actually, with providing one of the few platforms for free agent guys to get seen. The NFL just lifting that tryout ban, I think, yesterday. We'll talk more about that, and we'll talk more about what Marvin's doing for the free agents. Welcome into the show, Marvin. We appreciate it out there in Colorado.
Man, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, man. You've been looking forward to this early morning, early bird gets the worm type thing.
Yeah, I know you're a morning person, as is David Turner out there in Arizona. Top of the morning, David. And, no matter if it's 6 a.m. or 9 p.m., this guy's full of energy. I listened to the podcast yesterday, man, and we're going to have to keep up with you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I roll out of bed ready to go. I mean, I'm the guy that when my feet hit the floor, the devil goes, "Oh, he's up." So, I'm ready to get after it, get on, and start working these comments and going.
Yeah, let's do it. And our season debut from Joe Everett. He never leaves a stone unturned. Of course, NFL Draft Bible familia. Joe, welcome into the show there in Indy.
Hey, good to be on. Thanks for having me, as always. I'm sorry it took me so long, but I'm just glad to be LIVIN living.
Absolutely. And we go over to Mike Abadir as we zig and zag across the country out there in Los Angeles. Of course, Sapro Sports, host of the Mike Abadir Show that I appear on frequently. And it's a pleasure, and it's a pleasure to have you back on as a guest here. Mike, how you doing today?
Pleasure to see you all. You guys can't see me. I'm actually working on that right now. So hoping to get into the stream here. But I'm doing well. How about you guys?
Well, you're off to a better start than me since you shaved and I didn't. And maybe we'll get to see that. So let's dive into it, fellas. It seems like every day some new topics come down. Let's start off with the lighter side of things. And, it's really not too funny for the Seahawks rookie. But, we saw Marvin yesterday, the Seahawk rookie, getting cut, sneaking his girlfriend into the team hotel room in Seahawks gear trying to pull the old hoodie over the head, and security busted him. Now, you're into the business of advising young players as they transition into the league. What do you make of this situation, and is this a common thing?
Well, I don't think that it's as common as it probably used to be, because now everything is on video camera. Every player should know that every team has cameras. They have seen cameras and they have unhidden cameras around facilities, because they try to do everything they can protect athletes. But I played for Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll was actually my first defensive coordinator, and I can tell you one thing about Pete: he is one of the most fun guys to be around. But I can tell you, man, when it comes to football side of it, Pete is zero nonsense when it comes to that kind of stuff. And when you're a young guy, undrafted, free agent guy that probably was a little bit of one of the guys on the outside anyway, you cannot afford to make those type of mistakes with a team. And it's basically it made an example of him, especially with everything going on. You just can't be that stupid. I mean, and you got to have your priorities straight as a football player, especially NFL. And that's the thing with a lot of guys. The most difficult thing with a lot of young guys is they don't transition out of being a football player to the business side of football. And that's just a huge mistake for a guy like that. I mean, that's probably, one of the most expensive decisions he's going to learn, and somebody else probably will, give him a chance if a guy can play. But, if you can't play, I always tell guys a lot of times, if you can't play for guys like Pete Carroll or a team like Belichick, it's very few other teams will take chances on guys after you leave those type of guys, because those guys are your authoritarian kind of guys that know how to run the ship. And if they can't get you right, or you can't follow Pete Carroll or Bill Belichick rules, any other coaches be tough to kind of follow their rules also, yeah.
And they're one of the few coaches that can get away with that, because I think that kind of coach, and they have the winning pedigree to back it up. Otherwise, it doesn't really resonate with the modern day player. And David, you having worked for 5 different NFL organizations can bring us inside the building, give us that perspective in terms of, what is the team looking for? Is this something that all teams monitor? Is this something that the security guard snitched on? And any experiences that you've had in the past in terms of, again, like Marvin's point, this ain't Jamal Adams. This is an undrafted rookie. There's not a long leash here to make mistakes. And not only that, I mean, he's basically shot himself in the foot by getting signed by any of the other 31 teams.
Yeah, good luck with your career, Bubba. Because I mean, you're showing your decision making isn't what we want as a professional. Marvin hit it right on the head. A lot of kids have a hard time transitioning from being an athlete to a professional athlete. I mean, the professionalism is a very difficult thing for a lot of young men to figure out. And this guy, I mean, think about it. In the new COVID rules that they're asked to follow, he broke protocol. Now he's already showing you his decision making is flawed. If you bring him in, and Murphy, you can talk to this too, right? If you bring that guy in, you can't trust once they're outside the bubble. I mean, they're only 2 weeks into training camp. I mean, you can't tell me 2 months down the line this guy's going to be making the right decisions to protect the team and not bring COVID in the building. If he thinks that bringing this girl was more important than making the NFL roster, what's he going to do when he has the job? And it's a couple weeks in, 2 or 3 or 4 months in. What's he going to do once he has the money? Right now, he doesn't have the money, but he had the opportunity, and he took the opportunity to break the team rules. So as we talked about on Friday Night Scout School a couple weeks ago, a lot of scouting is knowing the character of guys and what you're bringing into the locker room, so you don't mess up the championship locker room. You don't mess that up for your coaches. And now we already have an absolute guarantee on this kid. He's not making the right decisions or even smart decisions for his life when he thought about, getting it in versus making sure the team was safe. So, and if he doesn't think it's a good idea to, protect the teammates in this situation in the organization in a training camp hotel, what's he going to do once they break training camp and they're out, living their own life?
Yeah, trust and character is such a huge part of the evaluation process, and probably again, with the lack of school visits, the lack of scouts allowed into the building, getting to know the person, right? And getting to know what's in between here and in here. It's hard to do when you don't have that ability to go into schools and talk to the kid, talk to the coaches, talk to the cafeteria worker. And, David mentioned the lack of maturity. John, I'll go over to you because you are making these type of decisions inside the building there in Toronto. And I just got to watching Hard Knocks last night, and you saw a little of immaturity, but it actually worked out in his favor. The tight end, Andrew Vollert, who, to his credit, worked vigorously coming back from that torn ACL. He gets called into the office, and he's like, "What? Are you effing kidding me? You got to be out of your mind." and Anthony Lynn's just looking at him like, "Dude, who you talking to right now?" But he went into. But fair enough. I like this Anthony Lynn. He goes into Telesco's office. He says, keep that guy in the short list. I actually saw some passion and fire out of this kid for once. I liked it. But back to, raveling this all together here, the maturity factor, the team character equation, and how much of that goes into, especially that bottom part of the roster, lucky enough to make that first cut of 10. But as you know, from 47 to 80, you are on a very thin leash.
Yeah, and I think, if this happens without the element of everything going on, there's still a chance, that somebody decides, to make an example of this. Now, maybe we're all taking it, too seriously because, he is a DB. He was planning on working on his man-to-man coverage last night. So, that's what he was really, he's really trying to add
man-to-man.
to the team. He really was. And you know what? It also tells me he's not a really good, not really a good music fan because he had 99 problems, and that was one. So just he really didn't do any favors for himself. I think, but what it did do for Seattle, and possibly for the rest of the league, is now you have a person that was made an example of, unfortunately. So anybody else that was thinking anything similar probably is now having quite the reservation of doing it, because I think you see how seriously they're going to take this, the same way you've seen in baseball, where Cleveland basically has suspended 2 of their guys, and that's a whole other situation. So I think guys have seen now how these leagues are going to respond, whether it's the NBA where the kid accidentally went outside the bubble, to pick up his Uber food, and stuff. You've seen it, now with baseball and now with football. They've given the example that they're not going to risk their season over ideas or things that you're doing, independently. And I think, we mentioned it on yesterday's show. The other thing that Anthony Lynn did was it was a really good example he gave to his guys, saying, the clubs that are going to survive this the best and the easiest are the ones that make the commitment to the responsibility part of this the most and the longest, because they will be the ones that are still standing there with their full team as long as possible, right?
Well,
and I think the biggest thing, that Pete Carroll and the Seahawks showed there was the protection of the bubble was going to be more important than any one individual. And if you were going to have that lapse in judgment, the bottom line was they were not going to continue to allow others to think that, because it would be so easy then for anyone else to think, well, they let him do it, why can't I? So I think the limitations was set, that unfortunately the minute you saw that, it had to be done that way. But on a lighter side, I think there probably is somebody on every floor or on every team that, they all have a Turk, and they probably now all have a COVID person, kind of making sure there's none of that stuff, going on, in terms of, it doesn't matter what you're trying to sneak in the building. If you're doing something that's, potentially putting everybody else at risk, you're probably going to find yourself on the waiver wire pretty quick.
Yeah, John creating a new podcast, man-to-man coverage over here. Joe, let's transition it over to the college side, because, we talk about SEC, ACC, Big 12, all planning to move forward. But here's just one case that you've got paid millionaires who can't self-quarantine themselves, and now you've got these conferences and teams thinking that these college students and players are going to just quarantine for the next 4 months in order to play college football. But breaking news, not every player is living the dream. 90% of them do think they're going to make the NFL, but the reality is there's plenty of players just there for the experience. They're living out their glory years, playing their final days. They really don't care if they get caught bringing in a girl, sneaking out to the bar, picking up their Uber food. I mean, how much of a dilemma or problem does this get when you get, a week, 2 weeks, 2 months into the college football season?
I think there's even more variables with college football, like you bring up. I mean, there's just even more risks. There's just so many more moving parts with football, but I think in college, there's just so many more teams. And then you just mentioned, like, how's a kid going to weigh those options and risks compared to a quasi-adult? That's what we're dealing with in the NFL. But I mean, right now, I just think, we're going to see more of that, especially when teams go on the road. The games get bigger. That whole team doesn't just have those guys. You still have the stars. And then the big games come down. That's when the thought choppers start raining. I mean, there's going to be girls preying on these guys, too. You got to bring that up to the table. So the opportunities will be there even in abundance. And the kids having to say no more and have their own moral compass, it's just going to be weighing even heavier on them, and for them to assume they're all going to make the right decisions is quite the leap.
Now, it's a lot to ask, I believe. And, Mike, let's go over to Mike Abadir. I know we're trying to get your video worked out, Mike. Hopefully you're still with us here. But I want to get your agent perspective and get your agent cap on. And what if this was your client? I mean, how do you handle a situation like this? Can you do damage control? What would be the steps here if your client had acted out in such a manner?
I mean, first of all, I'd be really pissed, to say the least, because this year, especially more than any other year, there were a lot of challenges for agents, just even getting undrafted free agents, on teams. They didn't have, there was no pro day for most of these guys. And so, there weren't even rookie workouts, rookie mini camp, tryout basis type stuff. So each and every player that got picked up as an undrafted free agent should have been a cherished opportunity. So just on that basis alone, it would have been really frustrating. I don't know who his agent is, but in terms of just so you know, with this COVID stuff, I'm talking to guys daily, right? What's going on? How's the testing going? Are you comfortable with everything? Is there anything you're asked to do that you're not comfortable doing? I'm just making sure that the player, with everything that's going on, knows that he's got rights, that he's got options, right? But on the flip side, you owe it to your team, your teammates, the coaching staff to abide by the rules, because people's lives are on the line, and that's not much of an exaggeration. So I think anytime that you put anybody's life in jeopardy, especially the older coaches, any of your teammates with pre-existing conditions, that's problematic. And so in terms of damage control, I think Dave and the other guys already kind of nailed it. He's probably going to have an uphill battle coming back. I don't know what his grades were like, coming into the draft. You guys would know better than I, but I would suspect if you're an undrafted free agent, you kind of have, a borderline grade anyways. So, I don't see him hitching on with another team. And like I said, I think that sucks from the agent's perspective, because he probably put some money into this thing. He's going to get no return on his investment.
And, Mike, while I have you, last time I was on your show last week, you were working through a situation where you had one of your clients have a false positive COVID test.
that was really frustrating. And I called that right out of the gate, because we're talking about Zach Wood of the New Orleans Saints, and he had tested each and every single day and was negative. And then they had him take an antibodies test, and he was positive. So it means that he's got some kind of defense mechanism able to fight off the virus. The next day after that, he tests again. Mind you, he's got an exemption from staying at the team hotel. He just bought a place in New Orleans, so he's just setting it up right now. Team said, cool, we trust you. Just go to the facility and back, with the exception of getting food. He's abided by that 100%. How do I know that? I talk to him just about every single day. I kind of know where, his whereabouts for the most part, as much as I can as an agent. And the only detour he's done is to go to the grocery store or to pick out, to buy takeout, take home, dinner. So he tested positive after this string of negatives. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? Have you done anything differently? Nope. You know what I've been doing, 100%. So right away, I knew something was kind of fishy. So I was like, hey, man, get them to retest you. He's like, yeah, I did. And we'll find out the results in the morning. 7 a.m. next day, boom. Negative. Day after that, negative. By the way, him and another teammate were in the same position. As it turns out, both were negative. These were false positives. Now, he missed a couple of days of practice time, or time with the team, I should say. But I feel bad for like a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, who went through the exact same thing with a false positive. Right. And by the way, most people don't think about it, but I, as his agent, got a slew of messages, both from media, family members, etc. Hey, what's going on? Is he okay? Is he sick? I'm sure he got 10 times more from family and friends and loved ones. So I kind of had a beef with the NFLPA in even allowing these results to go public before even the player has an opportunity to talk to his family. That's troublesome to me. And I called the NFLPA out on it and got no response. I don't have that kind of weight to be able to get them to, take action. I think this is something that they should have taken action on. But hey, we have the weakest union in professional sports, and I'm a member of it. We're not like MLB's union, the most powerful one in sports. Marvin knows.
Absolutely.
But this is some heavy hitting stuff. I'll go over to you, John. And we talked about in the past, what could this do to the perception of a player from a decision making standpoint. But even going back to the Hard Knocks, where we saw the kid from Alabama, Terrell Lewis, I think was test positive. He's in the Zoom room. The players are asking him like, "Hey, what's going on?" They're like, "Yeah, they put me on the COVID list. The 10-day." 10-day. Whoa, hey, you better keep away from me for longer than 10 days. And this is something now where there's a negative connotation. And then also the Big Ten medical report that I saw yesterday detailing serious cardiovascular concerns from the experts. This has to be considered now. Once you have that, what are the long-term effects? If I have two guys that are evenly ranked on the street, but one of them was on the COVID list, what do you think is going to happen there, John?
Yeah, and then we took it one step further to say, and it was interesting to hear, Big Daddy the other day say that if you have an insurance policy, that they are now writing them to include that you're covered if you were to have COVID or experience any lasting effects from it. Because, Mike, one of the things I mentioned the other day was it'll be critically interesting in the years to come. Will there ever be a kid down the road that was playing college football in this time frame and then goes to the NFL Combine, and when they do all the testing on the kid, fails some portion of it or is red, lighted for having potentially something related to lung capacity, heart condition, anything else that might, kind of spin out. from all of this stuff, because we've seen it happen before in a lot of, similar circumstances with different things, that those kind of things happen. And
well,
they're not
John, let me interject. Let me interject for a quick second to piggyback on that. I was kind of surprised that really the only conference collegiately that even remotely addressed this was the Pac-12. And that's because players formed a coalition talking about that exact same issue. One of the reasons that the Pac-12 did not resume, or I should say start a season or move forward with one, was because they felt that they had enough guys that had potential heart issues that they should not move forward. For them, it was a liability issue. But I didn't really hear that from other conferences. But you're exactly right. It'll be interesting because sadly, there are going to be some of those guys who do not pass their physical at the combine because of this very issue.
Right. And I think also, that'll be another thing that comes up sooner than later, because it'll come up much like it did, with guys that you've heard about having to, stop playing, high school or college football. We will likely potentially lose somebody that would have been considered at least a high-level college player when they go back to play, if they go back to play in the spring, or potentially prior to a fall season, if somebody takes an extended medical or things are added to the medical that they're doing at the college level to be proactive about this. It'll be very interesting to see what happens if a kid is put on a restricted list and then tries to get a waiver or tries to, find a way to compete even with, being listed in a different medical category. Because, if they're going to play, they're going to try to play for sure, but they will reduce all of those possibilities of putting somebody out there on the field. And I think it will affect, things at all levels, potentially all the way down, to eventually high school or college, to say, if you look back and you see later on, and you're at the combine and interview a kid, and he says, one of my parents or somebody in my family passed away from COVID, that's gonna kind of be something that I know walking out of the room afterwards, I'd be looking at somebody saying, hey, I think we need to further investigate this kid's medical, just so that it doesn't happen right there on our, in our circumstance. Forget about, what level draft pick or compensation you would give a guy. Your worst case scenario, as we mentioned, is having some poor kid in the building that you didn't know, and he doesn't know that he's, got possibilities of something, and then have it happen on the practice field or in a game situation.
That kind of already happened, by the way. Sorry to jump back in here with the Boston Red Sox. Starting pitcher, Eduardo Rodriguez. He came back after testing positive, thought he was ready to go. And team doctor discovers that there's an issue with his heart. He's out for the year. Can't risk it.
Yeah. Well, I want to go over to David Turner on this because he spoke about this briefly on the Mav Sports Take podcast. David, one of the arguments out there, and we talked about the divisiveness of the COVID, and you see the conferences cancel the fall league, and 50% of the comments are like, "Hey, smart move, you did the right thing." The other 50% are like, "Hey, the sheeple are falling in line." And I'm not saying I'm on one side or the other, but the argument that's out there is, what scientific data are the ACC, Big 12, and SEC using that the Pac-12 and Big 10 are not?
Simple answer. They're using the same science as you said the other day. That's what I was about to say in the room before is that you called it. You're like, do they have different science? No, they don't. It's the same science. They're just saying it's not significant enough yet to say that this is going to happen to enough people where we can't litigate and mediate the liability. They're willing to take it on, whereas the Pac-12 and other conferences are saying, no, we're not going to mitigate it. We're not even going to put this into the court system, into the whatever. Because John, you said it a couple of days ago, maybe it was yesterday. They still have to go through the court system once they file. They have to go through the whole process to see if they're going to get the money, right? So, you see that some conferences are saying we're not even going to do that. But if you do say, like the SEC, they're willing to take the $1 billion payout for playing this year because they're going to be the only content for college football out there that anybody's going to want to watch. They're going to take on the money and then they're going to pay out as it's seen fit, which again, on the podcast I talked about, let's stop calling them student athletes. Let's stop talking about this being collegiate football. Let's just make it a minor league developmental system and it's all business, pay the players and move on. You know, I'm tired of the blanket that this is a amateur sport that people, you know, don't make millions and billions of dollars off of them. They do. And I'm sick of the air. Oh, we're doing it for their education. We're doing it so they have an opportunity. They get their scholarship so they can come to the great state of Alabama and play ball at Bama and do this. No, because even in your recruiting material, you're talking to the parents now that they can come here for 3 years and make it to the NFL because we see record numbers of juniors leaving every single day. You recruit this way. Come play for Alabama. It'll only take you 3 years to get to the pros. Okay, so you're laying out a map, not for education. You're laying out a map for a man to get to the NFL and achieve his dreams and not take care of them post-collegiate career. Look at Marvin's head going up and down like it's a bobblehead because he's been through the program. He talks to the players all the time. He knows that this is a broken system. And if they play this year, you've now ripped off that cover of we are a student athlete. We're here for the program to educate these kids and get them an opportunity to play. No, you're not. You're all about the money. It's all about the money. It's all it is. And so why even have them attached to universities anymore? Just make the developmental league, let kids come in like a minor league system in baseball right out of high school. You don't want to go to college, kid. Come in, start making some money, develop you in your craft, and get it upfield.
Well, you know, the money is dictating why they are, you know, proceeding to play. And Marvin, I want to go and get your perspective on this. I also want to ask you, too, here on August 14th, how confident are you that we will have college football teams playing this fall here?
I mean, right now, I think it's honestly, I think it's probably 50-50. I think, you know, I mean, this thing changes weekly and daily based upon numbers or science or whatever you want to use to, you know, kind of justify that. But the way I kind of approach it, man, I just kind of look at it day by day. Honestly, I mean, it's difficult for me as someone trying to help players because what do I tell them? You know, it's kind of that wait and see approach on that. But I agree 100% with everything that, you know, David was just talking about in regards to that situation. You know, it's just a thing where somebody benefits. I mean, and it has a lot to do with the money. You can look at how the landscape changed over the years to where if you went back in the, you know, in the 70s and 80s, you know, a lot of the HBU colleges, you can look at how Grambling used to be in the 80s. Grambling had more players in the NFL than probably any other colleges. And all they did was just reorganize it and call it NCAA, just gobbled up and took all of that football talent and brought it to a broader picture to your major schools and harnessed it and put it in the TV packages and turned it into $1 billion industry. All it was just a reorganization of money and somebody that came out with a bigger and better, as they say, mousetrap per se. And that's what it turned into. You know, I think, you know, I agree with that part, but I guess it always teeters on that line of when you start paying players and how players kind of handle that. And you got younger guys, 18, 19, 20 years old, and you're talking about giving them a check. I mean, I know what the hell I did with my first NFL check at, you know, 21. You know, you're going to have, but that's just part of life. You got to live and learn. You know, you're going to spend some of it and try to, you know, obviously get things that you've never had before. You got to live that life. That's what you fall hard for. You got to, but you know, it's got to be that balance. And I think that's the only difficult part about that is trying to balance a player between football and also being a young kid. You know, that aspect. You know, so we just have to just Just go to day by day. But I talked to, some people down, like even at Florida State, about the situation and kind of what was going on down there as far as how it relates to, the players coming out and how they feel about a lot of things. And one thing that I've realized is these are some different players today than when I played. During our day, I mean, you just talk because you love the game and you believe in your coach. And you know what? We were just so thankful for the opportunity to play in the NFL type of mentality. I can remember as a young kid growing up, I was a fan of players. Tony Doss said I loved the Giants linebackers. Never had my favorite team, but I just was big on players. And all of a sudden that was my dream at a young age, playing tackle in the road, and when you ran in the, just getting beat up, and that was just how it was for football. It was such a big dream, and to do that, and for me to finally get into that, to get into the NFL was like a dream come true, because that's all I wanted to do. And I was a student too, but that was all I wanted to do. So I was just so thankful to like, man, this is the NFL. I made it to the NFL. The perspective on that has changed now. It used to be when we went to work, and David probably even knows this. When you saw a lot of that transition happened, after I want to say after free agency, after the '93. That's when you start seeing a whole lot of different changes in the NFL. When I first went in, you had every guy basically went there with a backpack and a briefcase. I mean, like it was business. You had a lot of these guys went with briefcases. Now football is second, to cars and PS4 and every other thing now. So, guys are, these are just different guys. We just got to, try to embrace, because it's obviously it's a cut out of society. It's how society is moving, and we just got to kind of keep up with that and understand that. And that's one of the, things that I had a lot of thought about yesterday as it relates. And I look at Florida State and I see all of these headlines and guys coming out and, talking about how the leadership isn't really leading, and how they're being lied to, in regards to the protocols, the health protocols are not being followed. For me, I get players may be scared, but I think one of the things as it relates, guys have to read instead of listening, instead of watching what's going on, a lot of stuff on TV. TV and the way it's going now, the media, I mean, it's just scaring you. Journalism, I'm a sports guy, but the journalism now is just who's tested positive. When you start showing me all of the people dying part, then, that's a whole nother perspective. But these guys have to start reading and understand that, at what point as a person or player or as a man that we have to take responsibility for our action. And there's no way you're going to tell me that these players are sitting here talking about they doing everything health-wise. I've been in NCAA locker rooms, and I've never seen anything how things are today. I went in there and seen 120 guys after a game not even take a shower and go home. So I'm just saying, the game is just, a lot of it's just changing. A lot of these guys are not being honest about what they're doing, where they've been. There's no way that when I played in college, yeah, I did some things outside of the boundary when during training camp and things, and we all wanted to have that little fun time. So guys have to be 100% honest. And the thing is, guys today have to communicate better. I'm so tired of these guys going and jumping on social media, blasting. You know what? Your coach's door is right down there. This is the same guys that sat in their house and offered you an opportunity when nobody else did. That's the same guy. Go down there and knock on the door. Coach, I need to talk to you. I have something I want to talk to before you jump on social media and just blast the program. To me, once you blast the program, a lot of times it's kind of hard to have a future there. I mean, some coaches can kind of brush it on the rug, but you know how now that stuff never goes away once you open that can of worms, because a lot of these guys in the media is going to feed it. I mean, to continually, feed that beast because they want, obviously to get that headline. So these guys had to be very careful now. And, I understand a lot of that is, guys don't know, guys are scared. They don't know what to expect. A lot of it is the parents. That's kind of why I got out of high school football, because of the parents. And these guys are being fueled by outside sources. They don't, a lot of them don't do the research themselves. They just go by somebody saying, hey, I don't want you to play, and because that disease and all of this kind of stuff is out there. And, and I try to give guys the best advice I can tell them. I say, listen, man, in life, you always got to make choices. In life, when there's something great on the horizon for you, it's going to require a sacrifice. And the guys that make those sacrifices are the guys that move ahead. It's kind of, when I prepare for the NFL, people would be laughing at me. I would be working out 2-3 hours a day. I'd be running through the neighborhood, running 4 or 5 miles at 2:00 in the heat of the day, the sun beaming down. And people are like, man, you're crazy out there running in that sun. You're going to fall out. But that's the sacrifice you got to make. In order to get over that hump, you got to do everything. If you're doing everything everybody else is doing, but guess what? You're going to get what everybody else is getting. You have to be extraordinary. And I think that's one of the things now is football has just become, you know what? I want that Lamborghini. I want the big house. I want this and that. But understanding that there's a price that's got to be paid for that. And that's one of the things we have to we've gotten away from when you're talking about football. And I can tell you and that's one of the reasons why I love doing what I do. Because I get to work with these some of these Division II guys, smaller school guys that got a chip on their shoulder. And they got something to prove. And you know what? They're all going to do that extra thing that a lot of guys don't do. They're going to watch that film. They're going to work out because these guys have always had that disadvantage and they feel like they got something to prove. So that's the reason why I mainly love doing what I do, because I like working with the smaller guys and the smaller school guys that's going to go out there that didn't have an opportunity. It's kind of hard sometimes with the guys with a bigger audience, the D1 guys, a lot of time, because they go, I need to be seen. You play D1. It's kind of hard not to be seen on that level. So it's just, I just get it, man. It's just difficult because it's just always the unexpected right now with a lot of guys. So I get it. But I think one of the greatest things is, kind of what we're doing to and I try to give guys as much information as I can to tell them, look, man, you got to start researching things for yourself. Stop being influenced by people telling you things, but understand it's a sacrifice. We all got to pay that price for success. We've all done it. We've all got to do it.
Sure. Well, this is an enlightening conversation. You won't get this kind of breakdown and analysis and perspective anywhere on the mainstream media. I can guarantee you that. We'll be back next week, as a matter of fact, all week long, 9 a.m. Eastern. We are extending the State of Football series, so make sure you tune in for that. We've got a few minutes left to play with. David, I know you're chomping at the bit to chime in. I could just sense it. So I just want to go over to you, especially one thing I'll say is, hey, it is a different generation, a different era. You go back to the Spanish flu of 1918. Not only did they play through it, they had fans in the stands. You see the pictures, the fans wearing the face masks. So it was a different time, a different mentality. And the other thing I was going to say, you brought it up in the chat room. Anybody who's watching the Hard Knocks, if that's their definition of 6 feet distancing in some of those meeting rooms, well, I have a different interpretation of what that means.
Probably got to count COVID numbers.
Right. Well, again, look at what they're doing in Hard Knocks. You just tune it on, and like I was watching, you watch all the social media posts. I was watching the Panthers the other day. They actually had linemen face to face without face shields on. How hard would it be to put a face shield on all your offensive and defensive linemen right now as you're doing walkthroughs? Understand, guys, they have not hit once. They haven't put pads on once yet. It's all been walkthroughs. How hard would it be to have a clear face shield on offensive and defensive linemen when they're going face to face right now? Not hard at all. They have them in the building. They're there, but nobody's thinking of making it mandatory to protect the offensive and defensive linemen to wear those face shields right now and on the field while they're doing the walkthroughs, right, Marvin? I mean, they're not even talking about it. You watch even Scott, you see McVay yesterday going, hey, hold me accountable. I'm not doing a good enough job. Guess what, Sean? You should have been.
Right.
Okay, you're leading the ship. You're the captain of the ship, and you were walking around going, "I'm going to wear a face shield. This is better than a mask. I like communicating without masks on, so I can see people's emotions and stuff." Guess what? We're not in that world. If you want to do that, do a Zoom call, or space out your meeting room enough where people can sit and talk, and then wipe it down afterwards before the next group comes in. There's so many ways you can do things. Right now, I just saw, when I watch Hard Knocks, all I saw was an illusion of safety, a liability of a sign posted, some walkway arrows going, but then you see the players lifting in the weight room. Yeah, it's outside, but they're sitting shoulder to shoulder. They're talking without face masks. They didn't have their mask up. I'm watching some players wear the face mask here and not over their nose. And I'm like, wait a minute, guys, let's learn how to put on a face covering. It is over the nose and the mouth.
Right.
Okay? It's not just
Governor
mouth.
Phil Murphy over here.
But it's like, come on. This isn't hard, and we're 6 months into this, and it's lingering, and it's lasting long because people aren't doing the right things to do right, and now we're watching TV. What have we heard of one fine for one team that hasn't done something safely yet? Have we heard the commissioner, Roger Goodell, come out and say, listen up, guys, we need to do a better job? Because as far as I've seen the statistics, there's only 6 out of the 32 NFL teams that have had 0 corona cases. Okay? 6 out of the 32. So that means there are a lot of programs not doing it right.
Right.
Versus doing it wrong or doing it the right way. Okay. So we're going to give people slaps on the back for not getting a positive, like the Texans, I think it was, with one of the teams. Okay, great. Well, what about the other teams? And yeah, Mike, I know there's some false positives and things going on out there and different situations on that. But what are the organizations doing everything they can to protect these men? And when you watch Hard Knocks, when you look at the social media posts, they're not. Like you said, Rick, you look in the meeting room, they're not doing everything. We have video evidence they're not doing anything, but not one fine is that. A young man sneaks a girl up to the room, which we talked about earlier, or tries to, gets caught. He's off the team. He can't get his livelihood. What fine has come for a team? And if a fine for a team has come, why is it not public? Why aren't we knowing this? Why aren't the players probably knowing that they got fined? That the organization's gotten fined because they're not following COVID. It's all about the money and protecting the money, which means protecting the owners. And guess what? The liability, as soon as they come out and make an example of one owner,
Yep.
then everybody's going to have an uproar. You can cut a young man from his livelihood for trying to get it in, but you're not going to protect the players when it comes to COVID. And you can see visibly on social media posts. The Panthers the other day had a video post where Christian McCaffrey looked at the camera as he ran across the goal line. All I'm looking is behind him going, geez, these offensive and defensive linemen are nose to nose, no face masks, no cards, no coverings, and they're talking about not sharing space. And I'm like, how can you even do this? And they don't even have pads on. Like, how can you walk through the hands without any pads on and no face coverings?
Well, we're deep into the conversation. We'll pick it up again next week. Always a fun time. Looks like to me, Sean McVay needs to put down that rosé over there, and it's fogging up his mind. But hey, 60 seconds or less. I'll stick with you, David. I can't believe I look up. It's Friday night already, or it's Friday. So give us a little parting shot what you got in the works with the scout school, the podcast, and the whole shebang.
Well, thank you. Tonight is pass rushers at Friday Night Scout School. We are going edge rushers, and that means 34 outside linebackers and 43 defensive ends. So we're going to get after it. We're going to get after the quarterback tonight, breaking down some top 4 picks over the last few years and how they translated to the NFL so well, from a young guy in Chase Young to like Von Miller and stuff like that. So we're going to go through that. Podcast will be another podcast next week coming out on Wednesday. The first one went so fantastic, and the response, I just can't thank everybody enough for their support in the podcast. And if you like what you hear here on these moments and on Friday Night Scout School, just imagine what you do when you give me a mic for an hour with Ryan Roberts. I mean, him and I go back and forth, and it's a fabulous environment to learn sports and things. We got some big guests coming up. We're locking them in, and when they do, we'll obviously get that out to you guys. I just want to appreciate everybody here. Marvin, what you said today, John, Joe, Mike, the perspective that you're able to bring everybody, Rick, like I told you, I think personally early in the week, it's just, this is what the mainstream media needs to hear. This needs to be pumped out. I hope there's an avenue soon that breaks so we can get this kind of conversation to the entire world to hear. Because listen, on this call, you have John, who's basically the general manager up there, me, who's the director of player personnel at a team before, and assistant general manager of a arena team before. You got Marvin, who was a first-round pick coach. You got Mike, who is an agent. Joe, who's been evaluating college players and talking about characters and everything of those guys for so many years. This roundtable today brought a perspective to the marketplace that not everybody is, not everybody's sitting at a table like you, Rick. So I really appreciate you including me in these conversations, because as you know, I'm very passionate about it, very passionate about the sport of football. So thank you for letting me be part of it today.
Well, hey, we only bring the best of the best, the cream of the crop, and I appreciate that, David. We're trying to do big things here, and to your point, I have a feeling that this will be launched onto a bigger platform sometime soon. So make sure you tune in, NFLDraftBible.com for that. Of course, you mentioned Friday Night Scout School. You can sign up for that, where you can also sign up for the 2021 virtual draft guide. More important than ever before, we've got a slew of scouting reports that Joe Everett can tell you here about. Joe's parting shot, and since you are first time to the show this season, we do need a Super Bowl prediction, my man.
Oh, yeah. Well, I echo what Dave said. I mean, Mike Abbs, Johnny Toronto, Marvelous Marvin, Diamond Dave, RIC, the place to be. It's an all-star panel. I'm just hoping I'm not weighing y'all down. But, no, just looking forward to next week. And I've been watching the shows, too, so I believe Bo may have stolen my prediction. But I'm going with Seattle. Getting Jamal on that defense and Pete Carroll's defense, I think that's electric. Russell, every time, count him out. I've counted out Russell pretty much his whole career, and he keeps proving me wrong. So I'm just going to start betting on him. He's going to the Super Bowl, and it's going to be the Chiefs. So I'll go 38-34. Chiefs win. Andy Reid back-to-back. Mahomes taking me home.
Well, hey, Joe, thanks for joining us, man. We're glad you survived the fire for real, and we're glad to have you here. Mike Abadir, we appreciate you shedding some great insight and perspective from the agent point of view. Of course, the Mike Abadir Show every Thursday night, I believe. Mike, tell the listening audience at home more about it.
Yeah, it's a sports variety show. We pack a lot in an hour. And it's a interview based type of show, and we've had guests over the years from writers from The Athletic, beat writers, people from ESPN, Fox Sports. Just a couple weeks ago, we had Jason Whitlock on with us, players of all sports, etc. So we try to delve into a bunch of different sports. A couple of you guys have been guests on the show and bringing your expertise, David and Rick as well. Hopefully some of the other gentlemen will come on board because, like everybody said, this is a really good panel. It's a great panel, and I'm appreciative just to even be included with all you guys. And most of you guys, I go way back, at least, 10 plus years John from the All-Star games, and David obviously from the Raiders and representing players. And I've always appreciated, David actually took time out of his schedule. He probably won't tell you this, but I'll give him quick credit for it. We went to La Piñata, Alameda, and David sat me down and he's like, this is what you're doing right as an agent. This is what you could improve in as an agent. He got a, when they say I made a deal on the back of a napkin, David literally got the napkin out and drew boxes. David, I remember every detail. I still have that. I still look at it in terms of how to present players to the NFL, especially when you're talking about your like mid-range, mid-rounders, late rounders, undrafted free agents. Showed me a great presentation tactic. I've been utilizing it ever since and have had better results since. So, and obviously, Rick, I go way back with you, probably 14 years or so. Anyways, don't want to be long-winded, but and hopefully, Marvin, I get to know you a little bit better, and Joe as well. But this is a great panel. You don't get it anywhere else, and I think this once we get into more homes or cell phones or laptops or podcasts or whatever, I think people are really gonna gravitate towards this than some of the more mainstream watered down stuff, because there's a lot of hardcore football fans, and the best evidence for that is when you go on Twitter and you go on some of the beat writers' feeds, just the depth of questions and interest, it's really unbelievable. People want to know more than Tom Brady and Cam Newton and the guys that you hear about regularly, and what's Antonio Brown gonna do and that kind of stuff. People want to know about their linemen, offensive, defensive linemen. They want to know about the special teams guys. They want to know about their coaching staff. They want to know about the upcoming draft and who are the players that they need, positions of need, that kind of stuff. There's a thirst for it out there, and there's a huge market for what this panel provides. So excellent stuff, Rick. I definitely appreciate it. Hopefully you'll have me back on. I've got some divisive takes on the COVID situation. I'll save that for next time so I don't offend anybody right out of the gate here. But I think Marvin kind of hinted at it a little bit.
Let's save it for next week because we are out of time. We'll get you back on next week before we get into another debate here. Good. And I appreciate it because we are the people's champion here at the NFL Draft Bible, giving you the people what they want to hear. One last quick hit from you, Mike. Super Bowl prediction. Who do you got for us?
Kansas City versus the New Orleans Saints. I think the Saints have tried 3 years in a row and have had terrible luck, especially 2 prior years prior to last year. And I think they get it together. It's their last chance, in my opinion. They don't do it now. It's now or never. But I think the NFC Championship game is between Seattle, as Joe mentioned, and the Saints.
Super Bowl winner is?
Kansas City repeats. We haven't had a repeat winner in a few years, and we're going to get one this year.
Easier said than done. We shall see. A lot of people going with that Chiefs bandwagon. It's getting to be a packed house there. Marvin Jones, great time. Hopefully we can get you on next week too. Sure. And we haven't talked enough about the free agent database that you're the director of operations for here at the NFL Draft Bible. Make sure you contact us, ric@nfldraftbible.com, if you want to learn more about it. But I'll let Marvin tell you about it.
Oh, it's fantastic, man. It's the best thing since sliced bread. Well, it's honestly, right now it's very imperative time for guys that are coming out of college, even, guys that are not having their seasons right now, pro days, but we are the connection, man. If you want to, come aboard and join us, get a great professional scouting portfolio done that's pushed out to all the teams. I think that it's just been great for me because, being a minor league coach for the last maybe 6 or 7 years, that's kind of what I've already done, is just kind of try to help develop guys, smaller school guys, guys for whatever reason made a dumb decision and try to get them back on track. But what I do is the football side is very imperative in just getting these guys out there. But most importantly, I give these guys a lesson on just how to try to do things right. The professional side of trying to get into sports, because I get 100 film a day from guys, but that's not what I'm looking for. I mean, obviously, I can look at a tape and tell you in the first 10 seconds if this guy can play or not. But the thing I do is I scour social medias, I scour trying to make sure guys have that image. When you kind of on the outside looking in, those are the variables that are going to be more important. What kind of image a guy has. Second question is always, you have any felonies? No, I'm just but just trying to tell them, hey, this, like I tell guys, I got 3 things I require all my players to do. Number 1, be on time. You got to work out. And you got to watch film. If you don't give me all 3 of those things, you have 0 chance of even getting a sniff. So and I tell them about all of these requirements and things you got to have. I've been through, like I tell guys, I was a first-round draft choice, so I didn't have to go through a lot of that process. So for me, coaching and having to go through that is how I really learned and said, wow, these guys really have no clue of what it takes to be a professional player. Why don't somebody like myself give them an opportunity, give them that insight information? People really don't understand. There is so much talent that's not playing on a professional level because it's just they couldn't transition. I was great because I had a brother, an older brother that played at Florida State and got a shot in the NFL and to guide me. That's the difference. I had somebody that guided me through all of that stuff. If I didn't probably have my brother, who knows what could have happened. I could have strayed and, not done everything. But I had somebody that had a footprint on that and laid it out for me. And all he said, the same thing now when I tell my son, my son is, a 16-year-old kid and got about 30 D1 offers now. And I tell him, I said, son, the footprint has already been laid for you. You know how this thing works. You just have to go through the process of doing everything and staying on the right track. And so that's the same thing that I'm offering to guys that, whether you're a small school guy, whether you're a guy that's just had your senior season canceled, that's what I'm offering to you. I'm giving you a blueprint of things you got to do in order to be successful or to even have a chance at getting a sniff of an opportunity. So, and that's what it's about for me. And I think this is my passion, helping these guys out, seeing them being successful, in their goals. So I think that's the reason why, this NFL Draft Bible undrafted free agent database is a great thing for these guys, especially now. I mean, there's not been a lot of contact between teams and stuff like that, but this is just a great opportunity to have something that's going to be first class. You got a company, like I tell them, has been around, 20 years, with a great track record. You got so many great guys that are involved with the Draft Bible, that's been a part of the Draft Bible, that reputable guys, credibility that we bring to the table, and that this is just an alternative avenue, but right now it is the best avenue. And as this thing continues to grow, and a lot of the uncertainty that we're facing is going to become more imperative that guys jump on board, because right now, as these guys are, having to decide, if I'm a senior in college, having to decide whether that the season's already been canceled, whether I'm going to come back and try to do a senior year versus I'm trying to get ready for the draft. Well, this is where we take over at. You come to us and you start getting yourself put out there now. Start getting those, some of the part of stuff I know with David and guys with things like the ANC combine. Start getting those certified numbers, man, and start getting that stuff together now. Start getting your resume. That's what we are. We are a professional football resume service with a blueprint on how to make yourself in the best possible position of being successful.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, if you're a current street free agent, There's nobody better here paving the way than Marvin Jones, the free agent database on the NFL Draft Bible. And teams have these limited tryouts. They're reaching out to guys like Marvin. They're reaching out to David Turner, who just got done with the ANC Combine Circuit. They're reaching out to the NFL Draft Bible. So if you want to learn more, again, RIC at NFLDraftBible.com. We were lucky enough to have the Shade Tree bless us here on the NFL Draft Bible State of Football presentation. And, of course, my co-host each and every day here on the State of Football, John Murphy, will be back all next week. We're extending the show. We'll be here every day, 9 a.m. John, what's on the docket? What are we going to talk about?
Well, thankfully, we have them in quarantine from having good guests. So we've definitely had that in spades every day. And I think the biggest thing is that what Marvin is saying is happening with the players can also happen on a forum like this with the other aspects of the business, right? We've had media people, we've had agents, we had Big Daddy on. You're able to learn something new that you can then take from this conversation and bring it to other conversations that hopefully end up with different answers or different ideas being shared rather than the same, like kind of only one side of the story, or one avenue, to those things. So I think it's real interesting, moving forward. You've seen the conferences that are opting out. A lot of them have team presidents with their backgrounds. When you look at the SEC, still saying they're playing football. LSU's team president has a legal background. Alabama's team president, school president has a background more analytics and business and kind of a thought thinking kind of guy. Where it's not just science and medical. They're looking at, like Dave said, if there's a possibility of doing something and being able to get through it, they're going to try to work to find an answer, to move forward. So I think next week will be interesting. Every team's got to get down to 80 by next week when they put on the helmets and shoulder pads, with or without having a protective visor. And, so that'll give us some new conversation. Also, I think we'll start rolling into seeing some of the actual football competition, right? The thing that we've all lacked, seeing in the last 6 months is now you're going to get to see who are the guys replacing the COVID losses, who are the guys that might make a name for themselves this year that unexpectedly are going to get a greater chance to play. So I think that'll be real interesting in the next week. And then I think we'll get closer to a final decision to see, can these clubs that are now going to be 2.5, 3 weeks away from potentially starting their college football season, if they roll ahead, will they do it without any hiccups, or will there be any government or other legislative intervention there to either green light Louisiana and other places to keep going with it, or will somebody else put in a restriction at some point and say, yeah, I don't like this idea, or I don't like this going, to where it's going? Because the one thing that Dave mentioned is people could see this now in Hard Knocks or in photos, from practices or different things. It doesn't just have to be the NFL that steps in, because if a government official steps in, you saw the Saints then announce basically 5 hours later, no fans, game 1 at home against the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. That didn't come from the NFL. That came from Louisiana government saying, hey, look, we can't get through phase 2. So, hey, you better have arrangements for ideas. And the Saints made a decision basically 3 to 4 weeks ahead of time to say, hey, no fans. Right? So I think it'll be real interesting to see as we creep closer. And now the other two bubbles, NBA and NHL, are closing in quickly on allowing the family interaction, and outsiders to make their way into their bubble. Does the NFL at some point start following the trend of the Cowboys and the Saints? How many other teams will think, can they get the large majority of their organization into a private area or into a private bubble, to protect them, knowing that, like, hey, it's a game changer, if any of these NFL teams run into the things we've seen in Major League Baseball, if there's a cancellation like there was in Major League Soccer, you really want to follow and see. NBA and NHL are getting to the playoffs and have not combined lost any of their star players to anything COVID related. So what will the NFL think they can get done, or will they just try to ride it out the way they're doing it? I think those will be interesting topics of conversation. And I will dare say that by the next time we do this on Monday, I think I'll have a better understanding of if I'm headed to a hub in lovely Winnipeg, Manitoba, or if the CFL will push forward and just wait till 2021. If I was a betting man, I bet we'll have an answer by Monday morning.
Great stuff. Interesting topics. The state of the CFL, XFL, college football, NFL, what the NBA and NHL are going to do, allowing families inside that bubble. Sounds like a game of Russian roulette to me. We'll have some of these guys back throughout the week next week to break it all down. Of course, log on to NFLDraftBible.com. Follow us on Twitter at NFL Draft Bible. You can also find all of these guys' handles over there. We'll be back at it again next week, Monday, 9 a.m. Eastern. Till the next time, everybody.